Ancient and medieval games. So I'm a huge sports nerd as well as a history nerd, so of course I'm combining the two for the ultimate nerd fest. What are some of the organized sports that people in the ancient and medieval world love to attend? Of course, people have been playing sports impromptu and on the streets forever, but that's not the focus of this video. I was curious about the sports that occurred on a grand scale, formally organized, and rallying many people to attend. Combat sports. Of course, we should start with perhaps the world's oldest sport, which is people straight up throwing hands. The most popular example of this is the gladiatorial games, which most people have some idea of. Think MMA, but where sometimes Dana White orders his competitors to be killed after a loss. Or other times Dana White just decides to jump in the octagon and fight. I assume many civilizations had variations of this because fighting is the most straightforward sport that has attracted people the world over since time immemorial. Chariot races. Getting into more elaborate things, we have the chariot races of the Roman world, most popular in Roman Italy, Greece, and Anatolia. This stuff is really cool. So a bunch of dudes gather up on a team and race horses pulling chariots across a circular track. Except I think they would also fight each other and hit each other if need be to win. While many charioteers were popular, what's even more fascinating are the teams or factions that formed, kind of like modern teams and franchises that inhabit leagues like the NFL, the Premier League, etc., etc. The most well-known and documented of these teams are the Blues and Greens, while a little is known about the Reds and Whites. These teams could have meant different things. Some teams were perhaps more popular in certain parts of cities, while others may have stood for socioeconomic differences. One popular theory is that the Greens were the team of the people, while the Blues were the team of the upper classes. There were even teams made for very specific purposes, such as the Purples and Golds, who were formed by different Roman emperors, kind of like how in some countries, the army and the police have a team in their domestic leagues. While these supporters had their differences, they famously rallied for a common cause in calling out the Byzantine Emperor Justinian for his corruption, resulting in the famous Nika riots of 532 CE. Sticking with the ancient Mediterranean, the original Olympics were quite unsettling to the modern fan in some ways. People gathered from all over the ancient Greek world to celebrate religious festivals, and part of those festivals were the Olympiad. The Olympiad included many kinds of games, such as racing, wrestling, chariot racing, and even artistic things such as music. Most unusually for the modern sports fan, the athletes, almost always men and boys, usually competed nude. The games were almost always held at the town of Olympia, which still has a living population today. Polo. Leaving Europe, we travel to Persia. So a popular sport in the old Persian empires was the sport of polo, where two teams tried to hit a ball into a goal on horseback. A lot of people liked this sport, but it was particularly popular among the upper classes. Furthermore, surprisingly for the ancient and medieval world, this sport was notably co-ed. Women were generally allowed to play at times alongside men. Due to the size and influence of Persian empires such as the Achaemenid, the Parthians, and the Sassanids, this sport got pretty popular in the places the Persian empires made their mark. Polo became very popular in Central Asia, Eastern Europe, and most notably in places such as Azerbaijan and Afghanistan. Jousting/tournaments. Speaking of sports popular among the elite, most people are aware of this sport due to pop culture and the romanticized image of the medieval times. For jousting, two guys on horseback with a large lance charge at each other and try to hit the grid on their opponent's armor and or just straight up knock them off their horse. There were also contests with simulated cavalry charges where two large teams fight each other, and other times there were one-on-ones or archery contests. This was particularly popular among the upper classes of Western Europe in the late Middle Ages, so like the 1000s to the 1400s. Though there were some lower class variations. During that time, jousting sort of took over as the main attraction as the years went on. The sport also had a strenuous relationship with the Roman Catholic Church and its associated monarchs, who banned and criticized the sport at different times. This was especially true in England. Different English kings outright banned the sport on different occasions. Usually, jousting tournaments were put on to celebrate occasions such as the coronation of new monarchs, royal births, royal or noble marriages, etc., etc. Another thing that made this interesting at the time was how heritage played a part in the proceedings. It was customary to display what house you came from, what nation, and what lord you may have served. You can imagine that there was some competitiveness added on because of that. There were also tons of knights who made their living off of these tournaments. Mesoamerican Ballgame. Sometimes called ulama in the modern day, this game was played in Central America and Mexico in the ancient and Middle Ages by many Mesoamerican civilizations such as the Maya and the Aztecs, and though they are in what is today South America, perhaps the Incas played as well. This game was popular as hell. Basically, you tried to guide a rubber ball to the other team's end zone using only your hips and your chest, with additional points scored if you can get it through a hoop on either side of the stadium. There were courts all over the region, and the games were a big deal. The game is thought to be popular amongst all the people, yet surviving evidence suggests it was even more popular among the upper classes of Mesoamerican civilizations. It is even suggested that there were professionals who made a living off of this game, and that betting on games was actually extremely popular. Another reason this game is known is because of its association with human sacrifice. Although this did happen, it is unknown to what extent it was performed and why. Some people believe an entire losing team was sometimes sacrificed. However, if that was the norm, then the sport probably couldn't have sustained itself because nobody would want to play. Perhaps during certain religious days it would happen, and some historians suggest that games with sacrifices were rigged for one team to lose, perhaps a team of war captives or political prisoners.